Welcome back to WagerTalk.com. I'm Marco D'Angelo, joined by Bryan Leonard. We're going to preview an NFL game for you. And Bryan, I'm going to open this one up with a question for you. Is it possible to have a must-win game in Week 3?
I believe it is. There was many must-win games last week, too, because you know the stat. You go 0-2 to start in the NFL, you don't have a very good chance of making the playoffs.
You don't. And the game we're talking about is Cincinnati and Baltimore. And I hate to put the must-win label on stuff because generally I'm going to look to go against a must-win because there's not going to be any value. The public's going to know that they have to win, and you pay the inflated price. But in this instance, it's only Week 3, so I don't think the general public really is going to look at it with all of the magnitude that is involved here, because if Baltimore loses this game, they're 0-3, Cincinnati's 3-0. You're 3 games behind in the division to start the season, and then you have to play later in the season on their field. That puts you really behind the 8 ball. So I look at this one, Baltimore's got to play this as a playoff game, and it's their home opener. It's Week 3. They haven't been home yet. They haven't been off the West Coast. They played last week in Oakland, the week before in Denver, and they didn't even come home between games. They stayed on the West Coast.
They definitely did, and what makes it even tougher for Baltimore is they play on Thursday at Pittsburgh. And as we all know, Thursday road teams, that's a tough turnaround there, and especially if it's somebody that knows you very well.
You would think, and I hate to start a controversy, but you'd think if anybody was going to get screwed on schedule, that they would have screwed New England with all of those, because how do you get this schedule?
Baltimore seems to get screwed on the schedule all the time. They've gotten some bad breaks over the years. It makes you wonder if Al Davis had a small part of the Baltimore franchise.
Never know, or maybe the NFL hasn't forgiven for leaving Cleveland there. But this is a situation for them. You've got Baltimore last week. The first week against Denver, I can live with that loss. It's the Denver Broncos. It's still Peyton Manning, whether it's a 60, 70, 80, 90% of what he used to be, it's still Peyton Manning. And you're playing in Mile High. It's your home opener. So I can live with that. And Denver didn't do anything offensively. It was a 19-13 game. But last week, how do you explain last week? Does Terrell Suggs mean that much to this defense?
The defense hasn't played well before he got injured. Now they're really hurting. And the Raiders are a team that can move the football. There was a lot of real sharps that I followed that really liked the Raiders in that game. So it wasn't that much of a surprise to me. But now, you come back. Baltimore's, 35-7 since 2010 at home straight up. It's a game they need to have. But I look at these two teams, I still think Cincinnati's the better team here.
Oh, I agree 100%. If they play this game 10 times, I think Cincinnati wins it 8 out of 10. I really do. But given, the perfect storm of this game, of what it means to Baltimore, being the home opener, and Andy Dalton, until I see him consistently win those big games, it's like, it's like guys that can, drive a golf ball, 300 yards, but whenever they get to putt, that's where the money's at. They can't do it. And Andy Dalton is great until he gets into the big game. And last week they rushed the football 175 yards. The Bengals did. That's going to take a lot of pressure off of a quarterback. I don't see that happening this week because I know the Baltimore defense hasn't played as good, but the one thing they have done well is they've stopped the run. Only 69 yards to Denver and 97 yards last week to Oakland. Of course, when Oakland was passing as good as they were last week, you didn't need to run the football. But if Andy Dalton doesn't have the balance, is where I'm getting at, he's not the same quarterback.
Any quarterback is going to be much better if he's got a running game behind him. And Cincinnati's 4-1 straight up and against the spread. The last 5 against the Steelers. The only loss came in overtime. Baltimore. And the only loss came in overtime. So this is a good matchup for Cincinnati here. So if you are one of those guys that watches the games, you're going to be on Cincinnati here to value play. If you're not, if you're one of those guys that play, the spots and the situations, Baltimore's the way you're going to go.
And that's the way I'm going to go because I'm a situational guy. I am going to take Baltimore. One of the other things that I like with this game, the last thing I'll put on it, is John Q. Public, as I like to refer to them, is going to look and say, well, in Week 1, Cincinnati smacked Oakland all over the football field, and last week, Oakland beat Baltimore. So if Team A can beat Team B, well then they sure should be able to beat Team C, Baltimore, this week. Doesn't work that way. That's not how they build all those fancy, glitzy casinos on the Las Vegas Strip. Baltimore finds a way to win. It's an actual playoff game, in my opinion, for them. And I'm going to take Baltimore 27-17. I'll go ahead and lay the points with the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday. And guys, don't forget, check out my 5% college game of the month this Saturday. And if you use a coupon code Teddy10, you can take $10 off of that, or check out one of the weekend all-access packages for $69. You can get everything Thursday through Monday. We did go 12-1 last week with all of our plays. Join us this weekend for another big weekend in college and pro football. He's Bryan Leonard. I'm Marco D'Angelo. Check out all of our other videos this week at WagerTalk.com.